What's up, everyone? This is the Go Long Show at golongtd.com. Thank you so much for reading, for listening, for subscribing. Jim, I am ecstatic going into season number 4 for this company. It's crazy to think that it really was that long ago that we were at Resurgence, right? Where we're pounding those fried pickles, talking about that 17 NFL
17.
draft.
Yep.
That's right. And how close the Buffalo Bills were to drafting Mahomes. I guess it kind of started that October before that Terry Pagula, the owner, was infatuated. But that's kind of how we first connected. And the idea of the podcast was formed as I was actually interviewing you for the first story we ever ran at Go Long, over at the newsletter on Substack. And we're sitting there telling stories, reliving quarterback workouts, and it just kind of hit us both. You know, we should probably just do a podcast. This is too much fun. Let's just hear old war stories, old draft stories. And lo and behold, here we are, the flagship podcast at Go Long. A tweak to the rebranding, if that's cool with you, Jim, the Go Long Show, because now we're bringing in the Ty and Bob pod. Bob McGinn, legendary Hall of Fame sports writer, a mentor, a colleague of mine at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, is back for more at Go Long. We're going to be doing a weekly show. Same deal. You know, we're going to talk NFL, a lot of different topics, but obviously have a keen eye toward the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love. He lives in Ann Arbor, so we'll be touching a lot on those Detroit Lions a bunch. And then I think on this podcast, really not a lot's going to change, Jim. I think we're going to really look at football through that front office lens that you bring, which is, in my opinion, I'm biased, obviously, but unparalleled. I think it's really hard for anybody out there to get unvarnished takes and knowledge when it comes to pro football. You know, it's really hard to get anybody that's in the game on the record giving you the real and the raw of what happens in those draft rooms, in free agency. You're fresh out of it. You were a scout with the Philadelphia Eagles, the New Orleans Saints, the director of personnel with the Buffalo Bills and general manager Doug Whaley. And now you're one of the higher ups in the XFL, which is doing great and forging ahead into a second season. I guess that's my long-winded intro, Jim, of just saying I am really stoked for everything ahead in 2023. If you want to check out kind of the master plan for the company in terms of long form that we're going to be attacking, the cadence of coverage, the 3 shows that we're going to have in addition to the writing, it's all over there, golongtd.com, if you didn't check it out already. A lot of news to share on that 3rd show, still going to leave everybody in a little suspense for now. But Jim, it is good to see you, and I can't thank you enough for coming along for the ride. You've been just an unbelievable human being. I'll tell anybody who will listen, Jim Monis is about as good of a person as you will ever find in football, outside of football. You've got such a big heart. We've become such close friends through this podcast, and I'm lucky to know you, man. It's been a great time, and I just can't wait for everything ahead this season.
Well, cheers, Tyler. That's a hell of an introduction. I feel the same way about you, man. It's been nothing but I can't stop smiling when you brought up Resurgence that first time when we started just talking about that draft with Mahomes. But in seriousness, though, that it really is. We've become close off the mic, and been able to hang out, families get together a little bit. So it's been cool. But definitely the takes. I've always enjoyed your takes, and you've opened my eyes to things that I've paid more attention to, and that is why you're always learning in this business. And that's how we always felt as scouts. You always want to keep learning every year, or else you're not going to get better. And I feel like that's what we're trying to do at Go Long, especially with the pod. You know, hopefully we can keep getting guests, keep getting good takes. I really want to dive into these quarterbacks this year. I feel like we have a new crop of, you know, like the guys we've talked, the Jordan Loves, the Richardsons, the young guys. A lot of guys, the Ritters in Atlanta, guys we haven't studied. Pickett, is he going to take that step? I can't wait to dive into those guys and and hopefully get maybe some study the stat columns if timing works out. And, if it works, I'd love to still keep those going too. And just keep being a part of the Go Long family.
We're never going to say no to those columns, Jim. I love how you study the position and your quarterback grading system. I mean, it really should be implemented by teams because it's a scout's eye on the position. It's not a calculation. It's not QBR, passer rating. It's looking at every single play from a quarterback in a given game, giving him a +1, a -1, maybe a +2, a -2, with your, with the eye of a scout, like viewing the game through your lens, right? It's because that's football. It's played by human beings. It's not so black and white. There's going to be a lot of gray. So if we can get some of those columns out of you, Jim, that'd be amazing, because I think it revealed a lot these last couple seasons when you did those. And we should also note here at the top that Fatty Beer Company, they fuel us. We love them. We're going to still get together for some live shows, live gatherings over there at Fatty. It's so funny. We're all running around, doing podcasts, writing stories, planning things out, changing diapers, chasing kids. Nick and Chris, we've been meaning to get together with them and figure out when we can do like a kickoff bash for those who listen locally. I know I've said it a few times. Stay tuned, but we'll definitely share that information when we can get it. It was a lot of fun when we did something like that at Hamburg Brewing a couple years ago, and we've done them at Fatty. Remember, we had the Packers Bills Monday night pregame tailgate in Orchard Park, and then we also did the Bills Bengals divisional playoff eve get together at the same locale. So definitely we'll make that happen. And I just want to thank everybody out there again, because I wrote it, in the master plan over at the site, but I really mean it. When I launched this thing, Jim, I really wasn't sure what to expect, because I was at a place, Bleacher Report, not to pick on BR. I mean, everybody, all of the conglomerates, all of the mainstream outlets in some form or fashion are kind of doing the same thing, where it's gravitating toward the fast food, toward word count limits on stories, and just hyper jurisdiction. I shared the story on Sammy Watkins, where, I have this unforgettable, bizarre conversation with Sammy Watkins that I will never forget until the day I die. We probably talked for over 5 hours. We shut the restaurant down in Orlando. It was like a week before COVID really took off. And I went back and read that story. I totally forgot. Like, Sammy Watkins basically predicted COVID. He basically said this new world order is coming and everything is going to change. And when we talked, it really wasn't a thing. It was kind of a footnote in section D of your local newspaper. But yeah, etheric bodies, astral realms, other dimensions, demons. Hopefully people checked it out when it came out at Bleacher Report. But anyways, long-winded way of saying, when I had that conversation and I let a few editors know at Bleacher Report, they were excited. Like I said, a lot of great people there. Jake Leonard, Colin McCullough, Wes O'Donnell, Ben Osborne, who subscribes and is just an awesome, awesome dude. Love you, Ben. They were all excited too. And then there was kind of like this nebulous programming department that was entering the conversation and said, maybe just 800 words on the free agency stuff. That's all we're really interested in. And I'm thinking, man, you guys don't have a clue. This stuff's wild. So I pushed back for once, and to their credit, they listened. The story ran in full. It did really, really well. And that's kind of the conversation that's had, I think, at a lot of different places where, attention spans are short. I get it, but it doesn't need to be that way. We don't have to doom scroll on Instagram and Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. Like, we can choose to not be a zombie. We can choose to not just scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and be manipulated by these companies. I mean, that's what we're being manipulated. How often, Jim, are you just thinking of something, or you say something out loud? You don't even type it in a phone, and you are inundated with ads for whatever you just said. Like, we don't have to live in that world. Like, you can choose to take your brain back. So that was the appeal of Substack, the appeal of running my own business, do it the way I want to cover football. A ton of long form player profiles, the deep dives into teams, these long form podcasts. And if people want to get on board, hell yeah, baby, let's go. Like, we'd love to have you. We're going to innovate constantly. We're going to think of new ideas to build this community. And we're at this for 4 years. The business is doing phenomenal. It's supporting our family. We have a daughter, Ella, a son, Sonny, my wife, Gina. Everybody's doing great. And I'm speechless, Jim. It's just awesome to see people choosing to invest their money, which, as we know, with inflation skyrocketing, it's tough. I did not want to raise prices because I know it's tough out there. But be their time. Like, time is valuable. Everybody's so damn busy all the time. To invest the time to read a story and to learn something, I don't take that for granted. That you want to use 30 minutes of your day to read a story about Zay Jones, right, and how he turned his life around, or Carlton Davis, or the Detroit Lions, or the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, yeah, it's been a hell of a lot of fun, and we should probably get into this podcast. Let's talk a little NFC. We previewed the AFC, and, it kind of was boilerplate when you think about it, Jim, right? We have to talk about Mahomes and Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert. I think this is going to be a little more fun. I think that the NFC may be, obviously, talent-wise, inferior to the AFC, but the fact that it is so wide open, we can take this conversation so many different directions. I want to give you the floor. Where do you want to start in the NFC?
I think with the NFC, if you start with the mindset that Philadelphia will not win the NFC, what if you just think of that just with that mindset? Because I feel like that's the obvious. I feel like they're just ready. They're loaded. That's the pick right now that everybody is, obviously, they deserve to be the favorite. But if you're not going to pick Philadelphia, think how crazy it gets. Just in your mind, right off the bat, it's like it takes you in a whole lot of directions. I don't think it's as simple. I think, like we always talk about, it's hard to get back to the Super Bowl. I think another team's coming out of the NFC. Where I'm struggling is, who is it going to be? Because I still can't find that quarterback that I believe in enough. Is it Dak? Is it Daniel Jones? Is it Love? Is it Carr with the Saints, who I think are the best team in that division? I'm just saying, with a veteran defense, there's so many scenarios that can happen if you think about Philadelphia, not just putting them in the Super Bowl. Now, if you think Philadelphia is that loaded, Tyler, I'm not going to argue it. I think that division, let's stay with that division, NFC East. That division, to me, has taken huge steps, and Philly is going to have to fight. Giants have to improve on defense. Washington's defense is good. Dallas's defense is good. So there's going to be a fight for Philadelphia now every time they're in their division. Hurts, we know it doesn't get easier for quarterbacks. These teams are coming hard for, they're going to game plan all offseason. How can we slow this guy down? Not going to say they're going to, but Hurts is going to face new challenges. And I think you've brought this up. The coordinators are gone. So let's see if that does factor in with Philly. A team that I always like, it. I talk about it. Dallas, I think, can win this division. I think Dallas can win this division. And I'm saying that, basing that on Dak Prescott playing at a can't hurt you. Kirk Cousins, what do we always talk about? Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, that whole mix of guys. Just don't turn the ball over. Get it to your playmakers. Let your defense be great, because those quarterbacks have limitations. I think Dak has a ceiling, just like Cousins does, just like Goff does. They have ceilings. But their teams don't. That Cowboy team around Dak is pretty locked and loaded. So that's going to be my team to win the NFC East, Dallas, just to have some fun. I'm not saying the NFC yet, NFC East. All right, what do you think? You hate it.
Well, I want to know if you were inspired by Jonathan Gannon's fire and brimstone speech. to the Arizona Cardinals, because that could be a game changer in the NFC. You know, if that talent-laden bunch down in the desert, you know, you hear a speech like that the team itself put out. That's kind of what's funny about it, right? The team, their own media department is publicizing a pep talk, I guess you'd call it, a motivational speech. And they're zooming in on the Buda Bakers and the James Connors, and everybody just looks like they want to be anywhere but in a room with Jonathan Gannon talking about taking the bus and having fire in the belly. And I don't know, I really thought it was Kendall Roy, given the Living Plus speech in Succession. The similarities are eerie. But the thing is, Kendall Roy, he nailed that presentation, right? Right after, all right, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched Succession, earmuffs, mute, whatever you got to do. Jim has his fingers in his ears. After Logan Roy dies, Kendall, who was at odds with Logan, is given a speech to the shareholders, and he freaking nails it. It's unbelievable. So maybe that comp isn't really spot on, because I don't think Jonathan Gannon nailed that. So I'm starting to wonder, like, yeah, I've made the point on Philadelphia losing their coordinators, and Shane Steichen is a huge loss. You saw what Jalen Hurts did in the Super Bowl. That Eagles defense did not look good in the Super Bowl. They were great during the regular season and in playoff wins over the Giants and the 49ers. But how much of that was Howie Roseman, who's a recurring character on this Go Long show? How much of it is the personnel, right? A ton of sacks, a historic amount of sacks, a ton of turnovers, free agent acquisitions, draft picks. I'm starting to think that the defensive coordinator, and maybe I'm letting that speech kind of pollute my thinking on this. I guess I don't know how good Gannon really was as defensive coordinator. I don't know. Like, maybe it's not that big of a loss. I mean, they're going to regress a little bit to the mean. Like, they can't have the number of sacks they had last year, the number of turnovers. Like, that's not a sustainable thing. They'll probably give up some big plays. They'll probably even lose a game here and there because of their defense. But I'm not so sure they're going to be in dire need of Jonathan Gannon running the show on defense. Let's not forget, Patrick Mahomes re-injured that ankle in the Super Bowl, and he still found a way to be perfect in the second half. Like, the Kansas City Chiefs gained every yard that they could gain in that second half up until the kneel downs, like up to the game-winning kick. They're perfect, which is an indictment on your defense. So, yeah, maybe I mean, I'm not down on the Eagles. I just think it's hard to get back to that point. And I love the New York Giants and everything that Brian Dable, Joe Schoen did this offseason.
That's exactly that led me. I wanted you to talk about the Giants. That's perfect, because, to be honest, I was battling with Dallas and the Giants as far as, like, what team do I feel like maybe can make a push and take that next step. And the more I looked at both rosters, defensively, I feel like Dallas might just be ready, you know, a little bit, and Dak just ready to get to that next step. I'm not a huge Jones guy, as you know. It's preventing me from loving the Giants. Jones is preventing me from loving the Giants. I need to see it. But anyway, Dallas.
I'm pulling up the story on Joe Schoen here, because I don't want to misspeak, but if you haven't checked it out, go long. I chatted with Joe Schoen, the GM, for an hour, and he gets into his life, his rise, his decision to bet on himself when Stryker had a job offer on the table and he could have made $200K in a couple of years. But we got to the decisions this offseason, and he made a point to bring up a few things. Okay, so Joe Schoen, he genuinely looked at every practice, every game, from training camp through the playoff win against the Minnesota Vikings, the playoff loss against Philadelphia. Remember the Daniel Jones story that we had during the season, when Brian Dable in training camp is structuring practice in a way for Daniel Jones to fail. Wink Martindale had the plays, the script in hand. Because, I mean, I love it from Brian Dable. Like, let's stack the deck against Daniel Jones and see how mentally tough he is when the tabloids are throwing you on the back page, and every tweet, every X clip is going to look pretty bad. And Tyrod Taylor was set up to succeed, and he looks pretty good. How are you going to respond? Well, he passed that test, but I don't think, I know it might sound like excuse making, but look at the talent, the lack thereof around Daniel Jones. It even blew my mind. There were things that I forgot about that Joe Schoen brought up in our conversation. Like Darius Slayton, right? He led the team in receiving. He was a healthy scratch in week 1. He was in the doghouse. So your leading receiver, it looks like his career as a New York Giant may be over before the season even begins. I've never heard of this player in my life, Marcus Johnson. You ever heard of Marcus Johnson? From 2016 to 2022, he was undrafted out of Texas, really didn't do much in college either. He was on 5 different teams and never caught more than 20 balls in a season. David Sills, who kicked around on the Bills practice squad for a bit, undrafted, cast off. He was on the team for a little bit. There were a couple tight ends that weren't even on NFL rosters by season's end, by the end of the season that the Giants were counting on. So, Daniel Jones did not have a plethora of weapons around him, but he did have Brian Dable, and he did have this really, really difficult offense to learn. It's full of option routes. The quarterback has to think. It's not Kyle Shanahan spitting a play in your ear hole right before the snap, telling you exactly what to do, exactly where to throw, treating you like you're some cyborg out there. Like, there is a lot on Daniel Jones's plate. I think that will bode well for him with a full off season and more weapons. Isaiah Hodgins came on at the end of last season. You hope you have Wan'Dale Robinson back. You bring in Paris Campbell. And what about Darren Waller? He'll probably get the most targets out of anybody at tight end. Looked really good in training camp. Took care of his body. If you get the 2019-2020 Darren Waller, it's a game changer. I just think that's the kind of quarterback that you need to win in the playoffs, and the kind of offense you need to win in the playoffs. Like, your quarterback is going to have to improvise and be the difference maker at some point. And I can see Daniel Jones making those plays. And I can't believe I'm saying that out loud, because like a lot of people, I thought he was done a couple years ago. At the end of the Dave Gettleman, Joe Judge tenure,
well,
I wasn't ready to give up on Daniel Jones completely, but it wasn't looking good. And they gave it a year. It worked out. And I think that you're investing in Brian Dable and the offense as much as you're investing in Daniel Jones with this contract.
It was so unfair to Jones almost. Like, he was doing, he was so young, and it was just, we talk about it all the time, quarterbacks getting set up for success or not. He is now set up for success. This is the first season you can say he's walking out there with the receivers, the skill guys, the line, the front office, the coaching staff. It's in place. This is it. I don't want to talk about Daniel Jones a lot after this season. We need to like get a good feeling on him and move on. Like, I feel like, because I'm with you. You can't write him off because he does too many. You see some good plays, but you don't see enough special throws. That's where I really struggle with him. And then you have to factor in what you just said. It's fair. If he's not having the full, the first string guys because of injuries, whatever the reason, I want to judge him with the full lineup. So yes, Giants. 3 teams from that division, sure. They can 3 teams can make the playoffs there.
The contract is so fascinating too, because the Giants, granted, it will cost them
they can
80 mil, something like that, but they can get out of it in a couple of years.
Yeah,
if they
2
really
years.
Want to. And it's not necessarily what it was reported originally. It never is.
No.
And at $37.5 million per year, yes, that's a lot of money, but
it's not.
What is that? I think 9th or 10th on the scale per year.
You made the
quarterbacks right now.
You made the playoffs with him. You drafted him. That's fine. I'm over contracts. How many contracts are getting reworked like today?
I know. Yeah.
It's just every day. Just signing bonus, under the cap, blah, blah, blah. I'm just, Daniel Jones deserves, keep him. You invested in him. You made the playoffs. Give it a shot.
It's wild though. I mean, imagine if he does take a substantial step and they get to the playoffs, they win the division, they get to the NFC Championship game, and he's a reason that they win. All of a sudden, that contract's looking like a bargain. I mean, because
Oh,
it's
no,
going to keep
no
going up.
question.
Joe Burrow is going to go north of 52.
Yeah. Well, you're
Whoever's
talking
next is just going to get more money.
next
Yeah.
thing
So
we're gonna have
it
to
could
give
look genius
Gettleman.
on Joe Shane's part.
Well, I'm just gonna say Gettleman might end up getting credit for Daniel Jones and Barkley at some point if they're having that kind of success. But
Oh, man, that is
anyway,
a
yeah.
complex conversation to have because, yes, like Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, players that Dave Gettleman drafted with a different coaching staff are getting rewarded. And I went back and I was looking at their depth chart, Jim, and I'm like, okay, well, let's slow our roll on old Dave Gettleman because they reset basically everywhere else. Like, just the salary cap was an unmitigated disaster. They rolled over like $12,000 that January when he was fired. So yeah, Kenny Galladay, Nate Solder. There's some pretty bad moves
No,
that were
I
made.
was kind of, yeah. I think Jones is pretty much the the yes or no on that one. I think the rest of that has been that would be the saving. That would save maybe the Gettleman era.
I want to get your take on this though, because through our kickoff series of stories, it's been a lot of optimistic storylines, right? Like the
Mhm.
Jacksonville Jaguars, Urban's out, Doug Peterson is in. Here's how they turned it around, right? Believing in your players, going for it on fourth down, the trust element. Similar with the Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell seeking a very specific type of DNA. Amon-Ra St. Brown catching 202 balls at the Jugs machine every day. Khalif Raymond sending hundreds and hundreds and thousands of emails out to colleges just to get a shot. Like, check it out if you didn't. It got to a point where, like, all right, Jim, you know what? It can't all be like this. Like, what? Got to look around the league and kind of see what I don't like into this season. And maybe it surprised people, but we'll see how it plays out too. The Dallas Cowboys, the San Francisco 49ers. I really thought that Trey Lance trade and the way it went down exposed the flaws, the fatal flaws of both Kyle Shanahan and Jerry Jones, where, Jerry Jones can't help himself. Jerry Jones is going to insert himself into the personnel department. Will McClay probably, and they have smart people in that front office, but Jerry's still the owner, the president, the GM. He didn't tell anybody. He is just brazen about it. Yeah, it took me 5 minutes. Traded for Trey Lance because I wanted him for a fourth round pick. I like it, but I think it just goes to show like it's not normal in Dallas. Like, don't tell us it's normal. It's not. And we've covered, all of that at length as well. And then Kyle Shanahan. I mean, what's the plan? What's the plan? You saw what the point guard like quarterback can do for you with the team of monsters around him. You get to the Super Bowl, you dial up the perfect play, you've got Emmanuel Sanders open for a game-winning touchdown, and your quarterback can't hit him. And then the next year, Josh Allen tasers you 32 of 40. He's unstoppable, and you feel like you need your own freak show quarterback. You sell the farm, 3 first-round picks, Trey Lance. It doesn't really make any sense. So, okay, you gave Trey Lance a year, and then that second season, he's so good that Jimmy Garoppolo can't even compete with him. Like, there was no doubt about it. Trey Lance is our guy. And then he has a season-ending injury. He's done. He recovers. And now Brock Purdy is so good that Trey Lance can't even compete with him, with Lance. Shanahan's just been kind of spazzing out where it matters most. Like, he's this brilliant play designer, brilliant play caller, like at the cutting edge of innovation in football. Yet when it comes to what matters most, quarterback, I think I wrote he's got like the tender love and grace of, the buffoon in your fantasy league that you try to rip off every year. Like he just doesn't know what he's doing. It's such a dichotomy. It doesn't make sense. How can such a good coach, and we got to cut him a little slack. There's been some bad luck, the injuries, and he'll be the first to point out that Jimmy Garoppolo was healthy for 2 of those 5 years, and Trey Lance's injury didn't help, and even Brock Purdy went down in the NFC Championship game. I get it, but the lack of a plan at that position, I think, is going to be a fatal flaw. And here's what I want to ask you. I mean, can you win this way, Jim? Can you win with the Garoppolos and the Purdys and, that quarterback in the cockpit being told exactly what to do every play, not necessarily improvising and being creative? Or at some point, are you going to need the A-plus improvisational playmaker with a little element of special at the position? Because it seems like Shanahan just decided to go back to what he was doing before, and he ain't turning back now.
Okay. Let's go with Dallas quick. Trey Lance. No, that is, to me, that's fine. That is one of the best front offices, believe it or not. Their talent, Tyler, the way they draft, their free agents year in and year out, they have ballers on that team. Okay. And that is a credit to that scouting staff, everybody involved. Trey Lance, third string quarterback for right now. Who cares? Why not? Honestly, Tyler, we talked about him on the show. I didn't see it with Trey Lance. I only saw a guy that could throw a nice deep ball. I didn't see a special athlete. I saw a fast, good look. He could run fast, straight ahead. He wasn't making dynamic plays athletically. So you wouldn't hang your hat on that. His release was slow. He wasn't asked to do anything there that he's going to be asked to do in the NFL. They said he was running NFL offenses. I've never understood that. If you're not facing NFL pressure, I don't care what you're running. And I just felt like I didn't see, honestly, Tyler, I thought I saw everything in Carson Wentz. We talked about that coming out. I was ready to mortgage the world for Carson Wentz. I would have done it. And I thought until he got injured in Philly, I thought, yep, that was that Philly got their guy forever. Carson Wentz forever. And here we are. The guy's not even in the league right now. It's crazy. The position's crazy. Situations matter. Trey Lance, it's not his fault where he got drafted. Let's start with that too. Not his fault. So let's hope he's in a good spot where he can learn and develop. Because young guys can develop, but he's not ready to play. And that's where we're going to lead to San Fran. They deemed him, he wasn't catching on, whether it was how he was handling himself off the field, in the classroom. He wasn't catching on for them to have given up on him, because physical's one thing. And he showed signs of good play in the NFL. It wasn't like he went out there and made some plays. Something happened there where they said it's not going to work, where they didn't want to work with him anymore. That to me has to do with maybe how he is either, I don't want to say how he's handling himself. He is not connecting with the playbook somehow, with what Shanahan wants from his quarterback, or else he would have kept him around somehow. That's how I look at that. And no, the third part of that, I don't think you can make a living with Brock Purdy. I don't. I think it's too hard.
There's definitely something that we don't know. It's a great point. They see him day in and day out in the meetings.
And that's why I say that. There's no way
they're not going to just broadcast it in a press conference.
No, and not after what they invested in him. And they probably like him and they want him to succeed, but they know it's not going to work there.
I want to get your perspective on this, though. So on Dallas and Jerry Jones in the front office, you're right. They've got some studs. I mean, in their scouting department, their personnel department, and they've drafted well. I mean, Micah Parsons could be a Hall of Famer. What I was told, though, was in those draft meetings, when you've got scouts and you've got coaches and their button heads and coaches are kind of looking at maybe a cut up with highlights, and they're not really looking at the prospect in full over an entire season. So obviously there's that dynamic. That's probably common in a lot of front offices. But with Jerry Jones, if there's a break, a scout told me that it was common for people to try to corner Jerry and influence him one way or another. That he was very malleable was the word used. Very, very malleable. And his opinion could just kind of shift with the wind. And he's the GM, but he's not putting in typical GM work, right? He's not Joe Schoen living 9+ years out of Marriott's, or Brian Gutekunst, or Brad Holmes, or all of these GMs that you were on the road with as a Southeast scout when you're with the New Orleans Saints. Like Jerry's not doing that. He's in private planes partying his ass off. Okay, let's just say what it is. As another source told me for that series a couple years back, he's got that Michael Irvin in him still. He's in his 80s. Jerry ain't slowing down. Okay, so that's who's in charge here. That's who still has final say. And yeah, I'm with you. Like, 4th round pick, Trey Lance, throw a dart at the board. Why the hell not? To me, this is like, we're seeing a sign of what life is like internally, day to day, externally in the public. And it's just not normal. I just think one way or another, it's going to catch up to Dallas. I don't know how. I don't know when. Last year, we heard Jerry Jones saying Zeke's our number one. Zeke needs the ball. Zeke. Would anybody that watched that backfield and that team knew Tony Pollard was better, right? And so they fart around with Zeke last season, finally realized he's washed, and tag Pollard, and he'll be the guy this year. But then what happens? Like, Kellen Moore gets scapegoated. You bring in Brian Schottenheimer, and Mike McCarthy's talking about needing to run the ball more. So I just don't. I mean, I could see the bottom coming out from underneath this team. I really could. Like, even with all that talent, I don't know. I like the Giants. I like the Eagles. The Commanders, they're not going to be pushovers in all of those divisional games with that defense. And
No,
Sam
defense,
Howell might be good for all we know.
Defense, they're Washington. You guys show up. Good luck with Sam Howell.
Okay, but I don't want to cut you off if you have anything else to add.
No, that
Dallas,
was good. We went long on the East. But that division has some power in there. There's talent in that division. We can go to that Green Bay division.
Jordan Love. The Jordan Love era,
I mean,
begins in earnest.
I'm good with taking them to win the division. You go ahead.
Ooh, you're going Green Bay to win the NFC North. Let's hear why. What you got?
I think this coach, quarterback, team, I think it's time. Defense, I feel like we talk about their defense as always having talent, but I don't necessarily feel like their defense produces the way we talk about their talent. I think I'm going to count on the talent maybe coming together on defense. I like this, Jordan. This is what we were talking about, how you bring stuff out. Jordan Love, I've heard enough good things and seen enough of the X clips. I'm a believer. Brian Gutekunst, scout I was on the road with, I respect. He went for it. He got rid of a Hall of Famer. That takes guts. He did it for a reason because he believes this quarterback can get it done with this coach who's had success. Green Bay. Go ahead. Rip it apart.
I'm not ripping that apart. I am all in on Jordan Love at this point. Yeah, I just think that we underestimate how a quarterback can improve. A young quarterback who's 21, 22. That's what I was
going to say. It's the power of the quarterback. It's the power of the quarterback. That's what you're betting on. That's what Green Bay is betting on, that they've seen it with him. Like the 49ers didn't see it with Trey Lance in the classroom. They saw it with Love. They know he can handle it. They wouldn't ever have done this if he couldn't handle the room, the leadership. They believe in who they invested in.
I think the turning point really was when they made Aaron Rodgers the richest quarterback in football, because that was when it was increasingly easy for all of us, everyone in the building, outside the building, to just write Jordan Love off. Like, obviously, they haven't seen enough in him. Aaron Rodgers just won a second MVP. They were the number one seed in the NFC, albeit he did what he typically does in the playoffs and fell apart against a broken Jimmy Garoppolo at Lambeau Field, producing 10 points. Even after that, they gave him that contract, and it would have been easy to say, okay, salvage what you can for Jordan Love. It didn't work out. Trade him for draft capital, and they didn't. And it's because he worked his ass off that spring, that summer, showed up to OTAs a completely different quarterback. Remember, Aaron blew off OTAs, right? He only has himself to blame. Like, the fact that Green Bay wants to move on and wanted to move on, and Bob McGinn reported all of it right here at Go Long, it's because you, Aaron Rodgers, quit on the team in the offseason. You blew OTAs off. You didn't work on your body, and it showed. You couldn't move like you used to in the pocket. You missed open receivers. You went on McAfee and complained about guys not knowing what they're doing, and you audibled out of Matt LaFleur's offense too often. I mean, the season fell apart. Giants, Jets, Commanders, those 3 games, when he dropped back to pass, double the amount of times that A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones even carried the ball. So anyways, while all that's happening, Jordan Love is improving. And that says a lot about Jordan Love, that when all of us, everyone is thinking that you're done in Green Bay, that they should just salvage what they can get for you, you worked harder. You worked on your weaknesses. And I think that, we talk about that element of special and needing to have something that pops physically, athletically in your game. Like, he had that at Utah State. Like, you could see those plays made. Outside of the pocket. I remember talking to Mark Ross about this for one of the Jordan Love stories that we had to go along. And Mark Ross said, look at that pocket that he had to deal with the last year at Utah State. Everybody graduated. Everybody's hurt. It's a messy, muddy pocket. And he's just got to improvise. He's just got to make plays. Where a Tua Tagovailoa at Alabama, it was so clean. He's got 5 stars all around him. I think that Brian Gutekunst, Matt LaFleur saw that season out of Jordan Love and said, okay, there's something that we can work with here. Let's bring him on. We know how he's going to work, and let's give it time. They gave it 3 years. He had the big turning point at the start of year 3. You saw it in Philadelphia, right? That wasn't a prevent defense sitting back. No, like, Jordan Love could have won that game for Green Bay, and now it's officially time. So I love it. I think that he's going to be very, very good. I think he'll go through growing pains. They didn't have any money with all that dead money that they threw at Aaron Rodgers. Like, it's not, they couldn't go out and sign a veteran receiver. So Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave, there's enough there to work with. They're just really, really young and really raw. So I think I'll still go with Detroit to win the division because I'm not going to argue. They've had their own 3-year process, right? Where they're
not arguing.
Taking 3 years to find their DNA, their guys 1 through 53. I think that that team is ready to win the division. I think they're ready to win the NFC and get to the Super Bowl too. But I think Green Bay gets to the playoffs. I think the future looks great with Jordan Love.
Love it. Yeah, agree. When you're talking about the ability for him to be a playmaker, that's something you can't really put a value on that we haven't seen and don't really know, because I always use Cam Newton as the guy that once you get that guy in your offense, everything else just takes off. And I'm not saying he's going to have the same style as Cam. I'm just saying that Cam had that unknown quality too, coming to the NFL a little bit. Will it work? He didn't run a real offense in college, blah, blah, blah. If Love has what they saw in him, to your point, Utah State, it's sky the limit for that team. They certainly have enough around him, especially with that running game, offensive line.
Brett Favre tells this great story where he was just grateful to be at the NFL Combine out of Southern Miss, and that when he's throwing in front of scouts and coaches, he just wanted to throw that football as fast and as hard as he possibly could. And he didn't really care where it went. He just wanted to show off what he did that was different than anybody in the National Football League. I think that is just such a great lesson for all NFL teams, all scouts. Like when you're studying these prospects, like just find something that's different than anybody else, and be self-aware with it. Because Johnny Manziel, you could say that's different. Nobody's making those plays, but he didn't work hard. And I think that's probably the two things you need. Like you need this, what quality is just special and different, coupled with the work ethic, the willingness to grind and to improve your weaknesses. And it sounds old school, but that's kind of why I love football, man. Like as much as we think things change, it really doesn't. All right. Some guys are going to work. Some guys aren't. You know, you put Joe Schoen made this point too. Like what happens when you put a lot of money into somebody's pocket? You know, like that is something you're really looking for as a scout, isn't it, Jim? Like when this player is given life-changing money, and that life-changing money, it could be the money a 7th-round pick makes, could be the money a practice squad guy makes. Like when you just hand somebody all this money, what does he do with it? Where does he go from here? Right? Is it hit snooze 3 times and miss a meeting, or is it wake up at 4 a.m., right? Piss and vinegar. Where does this guy go from here? Because they can go any direction.
I feel like the NFL does a good job now, at least providing everybody with resources and support to handle their money and get help. It's I feel like, Tyler, when I first started in the NFL, I felt like I heard a lot more stories of players kind of just not understanding, how quick their careers can be. That's what I don't think people understand, the average career length of a player. And so handling your money is everything in the NFL. It really is. And you don't know. You just don't know. Now, here's what's funny, though. Think about college now. They're all getting paid now. So they're pretty advanced, probably handling. They're all having, Dion's kid at Colorado.
I don't know, man. That could be more of a problem. I'm trying to think if somebody gave me money at 19, 20, 21. I'm going to Chuck's at Syracuse and
Tyler, when do you want
too many blue moons?
Right. When do you want that podcast? When I got too much money on my hands in college. Yeah. So Atlantic City.
Is that right? Oh, we might have to hear those stories. Jim.
Atlantic City usually followed somehow into the equation. Okay, but Green Bay, Detroit for sure. The rest of that division.
It's a great transition.
No, I wanted to get back to that because I didn't want to. I felt bad if we didn't touch on the Bears, like Justin Fields. Like Tyler, I want to see him. I want to see it. But I've talked about it at length. Volume completions. Like, give me 25 completions. Give me 20 completions. Give me 3rd and 12. Precision. I need to see the throws. I know the athleticism.
I'm just not there with Chicago. Offensive line.
I'm with you.
Got to see it.
I'm with you. The rest of the team, I'm not.
Got to see it. He's a fantasy quarterback right now, a YouTube quarterback, as Colin Cowherd would say. Hard to argue. It was fun for like 3-4 weeks in the middle of last season with Justin Fields. I probably said way too many hyperbolic things on this podcast about Justin Fields those 3 weeks. I do not want to go back and listen to those shows. But let's see. Maybe he'll enter that upper stratosphere this season. I don't know. I just look at Minnesota's receiving core. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, who by all accounts was unbelievable in training camp, just effortless what he does out there. KJ Osborne, we wrote on him at the site, saved a dude's life this year, went to Africa, says he witnessed miracles, pastor healing the blind, crazy stuff. And TJ Hawkinson is now the richest tight end in NFL history. They can score with anybody. Kirk Cousins, say what you will about him. You know what you're going to get out of Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time with him. You know
And
exactly
Brian
what you're
Flores is the
getting.
defensive coordinator, so it can only go up on defense after last season. So we probably shouldn't sleep on the Vikings either.
No, I think it's funny because it seems to always be the defense. You know, when is it gonna get better? I don't know. I don't have that. That's why I don't know if I take them serious enough. But how you can't slow them down on offense. So to your point, if they click on defense right away, they're a contender in that division. So
Thought it was really interesting what Harrison Phillips said on the Ed Donatel defense last season, where they were 13-4. They won 11 one-score games. The epic comeback against the Colts, the comeback against the Bills here in Orchard Park. He admitted, like, when they got into some of those defensive meetings, they weren't really as hard and tough and critical as they should have been. Right? They were kind of riding high from these wins and maybe a little too happy. Right? And instead of zeroing in on here is what went wrong. Yes, we forced the right turnover at the right time, but as a defense, we need to get better in this spot and that spot and this spot. So we'll see if it improves. All right, before we sign off, Jim, NFC South. We've spent a lot of time discussing Atlanta Falcons. I think we both love the attempt to be different, to go counterculture. Peter King is all in. He was on the happy hour discussing it too. Another one of those decisions that we'll need to keep an eye on. The decision to draft Kyle Pitts over Justin Fields. The decision to draft a running back 8th overall. It's different. I kind of like it. I think they win the division. I think they win a playoff game. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier. You pay Chris Lindstrom the most money at guard. You bring in Jonnu Smith to block. You hope you're going to get that 1,000 yards out of Kyle Pitts at tight end. He's different. Drake London, Scotty Miller, Mac Hollins, even though he doesn't use utensils when he eats. If Desmond Ridder is a okay quarterback, this can be a really good team. Again, the defense, they need to improve. They were really bad last year, but they were able to sign some players, draft some players. We'll see what happens on that side of the ball. To me, in the NFC South, it's Atlanta. I think Tampa Bay still has 6-7 core guys on defense. I believe Carlton Davis is onto something when he says that they can still compete. I think they're going to roll over and die. You like the Saints? Your Saints may prove me dead wrong here. They talk about restructuring contracts, man. They revolutionize that stuff. That's all they do is run it back. And I don't think Carolina's ready yet.
Tyler, I don't think any of these teams are ready like the Saints are, to be honest. I think Atlanta, we've talked about them. I'm intrigued by Atlanta. Once again, every game's going to be tough. We talk about these divisions. The parity is incredible. When we sit here and go through it like this, I just love what they have on offense right now. I know Dennis Allen, worked with him. I have so much respect for him. I know when I was with New Orleans, he was an assistant defensive line coach. To think that he has worked his way from that to getting a head job in the NFL, fired, set up for failure. Mickey Loomis, incredible loyalty. I would think Sean Payton also gave his blessing on Dennis Allen to Mickey. Yeah. I would think. But I just love that. I know what Dennis Allen's all about. And those guys on defense, it's hard to find guys like Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Lattimore, corner, Matthew. There's something about that team, and I just feel like they are better. That division, I feel like they are the best team in that division. They get to the playoffs healthy. I think they make noise. That receiving core is scary. That running game is scary. The offensive line is legit.
Demario Davis may be the most underrated player in the sport itself.
You
Just
did.
watch him in a game.
Yeah.
Holy hell.
That's why I bring him up, because Tyler, it's people don't realize he's a car crash. Like, that's when you always talk about the NFL players are different. That I think of him. Like, yeah, that's not for me. Like, that's not my style. Like, I'm not built to play like that in anything.
I got to see how that trade works out for the Jets, the Browns. Let's just see how that works out. Yeah, the one that got away. One thought on the Saints, man. Derek Carr,
He's
incredible human being. Anybody who has ever been a teammate of Derek Carr will just speak insanely high of him. We've gotten into it on here. How much of last season though was Josh McDaniels and the verbiage and the offense being a bad fit? How much of it was Derek Carr showing a little decline? Because you did have Devontae Adams, who was his best friend. There's talent on that Raiders team, but the wheels kind of came off by the end of the season. So that should be a little concern. Of course, if I'm putting Tampa Bay ahead of New Orleans, I'd have to defend Baker Mayfield in that same vein, that's where it gets a little tricky. I'm still on that hill, baby. Still going to die on that Baker Hill.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to touch on you. Hey, look, I put myself out there on some things, so we do that every now and then. It's okay. That's why.
Yeah, why not?
Hey, real quick though, with the NFC West, San Fran, obviously the talent, but I'm just not.
I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle won the division
I'm
at all.
there. I'm not. That's what I was going to say. Wouldn't surprise me either. Read my
The
mind.
back-to-back drafts that John Schneider and Pete Carroll have had. I mean, I'm not sure there's better back-to-back drafts out there in the NFL. And then you just completely turn Geno Smith's career around. Let's see if that sticks with Geno. Dave Canales off to Tampa. But then they draft Jackson Smith and Jigba. DK Metcalf's in his prime. Tyler Lockett is still there. Zach Charbonnet is drafted to pair with Ken Walker. They've got playmakers and ascending talent. So yeah, we kind of maybe we buried the lead on this NFC preview. Maybe it's Seattle that gets out of this conference. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm going to take them to win the division.
No, I wouldn't disagree with that. Because this is me just not knowing enough about Purdy to buy into Purdy.
Yeah.
If Purdy is for some reason, if he's for some reason very good, yeah, I'm taking the 49ers to win the division, and I'm taking them to win the NFC if Purdy is real. But I'm not convinced. I can't go there yet because I haven't seen Purdy enough.
The last player picked in the draft.
Yep.
I just can't see Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, all of these pieces staying healthy and in their prime for a season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons. But hey, maybe we're just a bunch of anti-Purdites on this podcast. We'll see. That's why they play the games. Okay.
So
that was fun.
I don't think we picked an NFC. Did you?
Well,
pick an
I was
NFC
wondering if we wanted to. Did we want to throw predictions
No.
out there? Because we're going to have them at the site. You can if
Yeah,
you
we'll
want.
do it on
or
the.
we
Yeah,
can
no,
save
because
them.
I'm not. I can't pick this NFC.
You're gonna pull an all-nighter studying the stats, aren't you? And then
You won't believe some of the film I have to watch tonight.
You're gonna be all 22 and until your eyes bleed.
Man, we are 2 nights away, though, Tyler. I can't wait for this season to get. That's why it was fun the way you kicked the show off, just talking about how this whole thing got started, and now it's the start of the season. It is kind of like it's like, hey, everybody's winning the Super Bowl right now, undefeated. Everybody feels good.
Absolutely. And I just can't thank everybody out there enough. This is a dream. I mean, when I was a kid growing up here in Western New York, I remember making, Packer weeklies for my mom and dad, right? Growing up as a Packer fan. And like just reading the Pack Report, reading the Journal Sentinel, the Green Bay News Chronicle, the Press Gazette as a kid, and just trying to create my own little weekly publication as a third grader, watching the Packers. And I mean, to be able to start a long form website and for people to invest in it and for this thing to keep going 4 years and not just keep going, right? I mean, it's not just a matter of not having ads and sponsors and VC money. Like this business is doing better than I ever expected. The numbers are great, and it's all because of our readers. It's all because of our subscribers and the investment that you have put in to go along. It will always be put back into the company. Hey, incredibly fortunate. Thank you so much, and we are so psyched with what's ahead in 2023, 2024. Again, thank you, Jim. You get on that film and you report your findings ASAP.
It's all will go to FanDuel.